Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our latest webinars, Mobile Forms That Go the Extra Mile. Today, I'm joined by Steve. Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, everybody.
And good morning to everybody on Facebook Live and YouTube. We're streaming across multiple platforms, which is something I thought I'd never say at my age. So, Steve, today we'll jump straight into it because we've got quite a lot to get through. If people during the session have questions, then you might see from his picture in the corner that we are also joined by Adrian today, who's given us some tech support. But Adrian's also going to be on the lookout for any questions that you guys have. So feel free to jump into the chat. And if it's something that we can answer, we'll deal with it as they come up. So this is going to sound maybe like an odd question for you, Steve, because you talk about it all the time. But to kick this off, and for clarification for everybody else that's with us, what do you define as a mobile form in this context?
I think mobile forms traditionally have been on paper, where the engineer in the field's been capturing information for service and work done purposes. It might be for health and safety, like capturing risk assessment and method statements, testing, calibration. So it's any activity where you're capturing information in the field and relaying that back to the office. Traditionally, that was done on paper, but more and more people are using mobile devices for that real-time data capture.
Okay, understood. I guess that is a place that people have traditionally and continue to do so, is to look for efficiencies, isn't it? Is how do we improve that part of the process? What do people do now then? I mean, I know that's quite a broad question as well, because I guess there's lots of different options, but to put it as succinctly as we can, what do people do now?
There is still a mix out there. So despite the advent of the smartphone, people are still typically, there are a lot of people using paper forms, filling them out while they're doing the work and getting the customer to sign off, and then sending them, either dropping them into the office or sending them via email back to base. Sometimes filling the forms out at the end of the day or the end of the week rather than in real time. Yeah. Or they're using mobile devices, but aren't easy to use, aren't flexible, and can often be a hindrance rather than a help when you're trying to fix something and you've got a customer breathing down your neck, wanting to get something sorted.
It's interesting that you said about the ones that kind of save the admin up. I hear that a lot, so that strikes a chord with me, having those conversations. But if we move on to the first slide, then I think this will again give it some context. So what we're talking about here is, what are people saying to us? What are the issues when we're talking to people in service-led businesses? What kind of things do they describe to us about areas of improvement, struggles and issues that they may have? Are there any there that kind of jump out as ones that you hear more often, Steve?
Yeah, we could probably talk through the whole webinar about some of the issues that people have, but if I was to focus on maybe two or three, I think one key one is just we all live in a world of change. So it can be as simple as you changing your company logo or address, or it might be a change in legislation, so compliance requirements change, so you need to capture different information. It might be that you're servicing different equipment. Different customers have requests for information. There's different risk assessment and method statements. So it's the change. There's constant change, but the issue, the impact of that is being able to react to that quickly, cost effectively, and adapt, have that flexibility to adapt quickly. Really, that's one of the key things we come across regularly.
Yeah, I guess when we were talking about doing this as a webinar, I was thinking, well, what has changed? What's different? We're going to look at the software shortly, so I guess it'll become self-explanatory. But I guess the key difference for me was there's two elements to this. There's the idea that you can change the output, and what we mean by that is the actual way that the document looks. But that's in some instances been around for a little while. there are still plenty of people out there and solutions that maybe it's because they're paper-based and it's pre-printed information that they have, or maybe the electronic document is kind of static and the template, you can't change it. But it's not that earth-shattering or groundbreaking to say that maybe you could change the layout of the document. I think what we're getting at today is it's the speed and the type of flexibility of who can change the document, but also, and I think maybe even more importantly, the feedback that we get a lot, certainly over the last kind of few years, has been actually the ability to change the data that you capture at that point.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we hear often, and is probably right, is very important, is getting quality information from out in the field back to the office, where you're getting real insight and real value out of that information. So that's being able to report and analyze on the data, right down to the bits and the bytes, the data fields that you're capturing. So quite often, obviously with paper, that's very difficult, but even with mobile systems, a lot of the data fields are sort of text-based, and you can't actually report and capture and analyze that information, which is is something, if there's something going wrong consistently in the field, it makes sense to see if there's something that you can capture and start monitoring that more, and tracking more information from the engineer as he's doing his activities.
I guess people are used to solutions doing X and Y, and then they're constrained within the limitations of what that solution does. I suppose one of the points that we're going to try and make today is that it may do X and Y, but if you need it to do Z, there is the ability and the flexibility to do it. And one of the things that we've already touched on is who can do it. So as you've rightly pointed out on a number of occasions previously, if you want the flexibility for your solution to do something different, then you would need some kind of technical expertise to do it, wouldn't you? And what we're going to show today is that you don't necessarily need that technical expertise. What we've actually developed is a solution we hope that can be used by the layman in terms of technology.
Indeed, yes. So if we switch on to this next slide, I guess this is, we'll dive into the software just to demonstrate some of these points, but these are some of the key benefits of having a flexible solution, be able to react quickly to changes with the requirements for mobile forms.
Well, I guess if we just run through those benefits that you put up on the screen very quickly. Flexibility, I guess we've already touched on a number of times already, and that you need that flexibility to change the output and the way that the data is inputted, and that's going to be obvious and important in the demonstration in a second. But also secure. When I first saw secure document storage, first thing that came to my head was, and you've highlighted there, is for audit purposes. I guess, is that predominantly around things like compliance and legislation and be able to kind of prove that historically?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's for compliance requirements to store that for auditing purposes, but it's also the secure access for our customers as well. So yeah, we live in a litigious world at the moment, so it's a lot of customers have compliance requirements, and it's being able to access those documents securely and also in real time. So if somebody's completed an engineer's completed a compliance document out in the field, that's instantly updated to the office, instantly updated to the customer as well. So it protects the customer.
Understood. Intuitive mobile design. I mean, it sounds like a kind of quite a salesy throwaway comment, but behind it is a really important point, I guess, which will lead on to the fourth one, easy data collection. But I guess the point that strikes me, and has done for some time, is people use solutions and they rely on the back office solution, as we would call it. So the software that's running the business that's in the office to produce data that company or the users of that company want to act upon. So they're looking to input data in order to be able to get good quality data out. Now, whilst that's an obvious statement to make, if you trace the input of that data back, most of it, or certainly a lot of the useful information that you want to act upon, is actually coming from the engineer, so the field workers, so they're inputting the data. So actually making the inputting of the data for them easy through it being, and that's where I'm getting to laboring the point a little, I guess, but the intuitive mobile design is saying, well, actually, if it's easy to input that data and it catches everything they need to, then you're more likely to get better quality information at that point into the system, and consequently better quality information out that you can then use to have a genuine, positive impact.
Absolutely. I think you've covered most points there, Gary, and I've only got one to add, is that also it stops feedback from the engineers complaining around it being difficult to fill out forms as well. So you're not getting the headache of engineers saying that they've not done something because it's difficult to do. So an example I've had recently is within the fire and security industry, engineers having to service and inspect large volumes of assets and equipment, and having the ability to sort of complete those in blocks rather than individual has given them a big benefit, really, and less headaches and complaining from the guys out in the field as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, that that leads nicely onto easy data collection. It's the same point, really. It's I guess I wrap the two up together, but yeah, we want the facility for the engineer to be able to collect that data easily, so that the back office can collect the data easily from the engineer. So I guess we've covered that. And real-time visibility, which again sounds like a throwaway comment, but has a really important point behind it, which is demands are changing, aren't they? Both for the service-led businesses that we talk to, but more importantly, their customers. So it's about seeing what's going on in real time rather than reacting. I know proactive, reactive, that whole cliche is quite common, but historically people would be acting upon information and data that's presented to them a week or a month after they've actually happened.
Yeah, and I think people's expectations nowadays with smartphones and logging onto your bank and get instant updates and things, that people, to give customers what they expect, that's having real-time access and real-time visibility, I think is key to keeping people happy.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess, I'm probably going to get questions or have questions myself in relation to maybe those 5 points as we go through looking at the software. So I think we've probably wasted enough time chatting through the points today. So software demonstration wise, I can see we're going to look at the creation and editing of mobile forms, and then what else are you going to move on to after that, Steve?
Yeah, I'm just going to show a couple of forms on the mobile app as well to show you what the engineer sees, and then we'll touch on a couple of the output documents as well. So yeah, let's dive into the software. So this is our web-based Office version of the software, and I'll show you the engineer application in a second. So we've got my home page here, which is completely configurable, and you can look at some of our other webinars to go through this, but this is tailored specifically for me, showing the information I want to see. But I'm now going to dive into the module, which is specifically designed, as you said already, to help non-technical. It's designed for non-technical users, so you don't have to be a software expert to create and develop forms. So we've got a list of all the test, calibration and certificates within the system. We've got a global search at the top here, so I can quickly get to the forms that I'm looking for. But I'm going to start off by actually creating a form from scratch. So I'm going to create let's start with a vehicle checklist, and it's just giving me a green tick there to say that that's already been taken. So that one's green, which is good. And it's asking me for a description.
Just to clarify, it's a minor point, Steve, but from what I can tell from there, if you've got a large amount of forms, which some of our customers do, maybe even hundreds, what that's doing is preventing you from duplicating the name. Exactly
that. And it's
a minor point, but
it's annoying when you go through a website and you get to the end and you're trying to check out, and it stops you from doing so.
The only reason I mentioned it and highlighted it is duplicate data is something that we hear all the time. It's a constant complaint, it's a constant issue and a frustration for people is people duplicating data. So that sense check, I think, is great.
And we've got various different types of forms here, form template. So pass fail, date comparison are obvious, and calculated is often used within sort of calibration and testing checks. And we've got combined form, which combines the above, but we're going to just show off some of the capability within the module through the custom form. So I'm going to create the form from scratch here, and this takes us into the form builder. So just a quick brief orientation. On the left hand side here, we've got all the data fields. We've got the workspace of the form design in the middle, and then we've got some intelligence sat behind the field properties there, and we've got some tabs to navigate across the top, which I'll go through into a second. But let's just quickly throw something together. So we pick a data field from the left hand side, we simply pull it across, and it asks us for a field name. So I'm going to enter vehicle not running just as a checkbox. We've got the options here to make the field mandatory. We can set it up to notify a user within the software based on the output of the field. So the user gets notified at the top here back in the office from the engineer in the field, and we can show it on the job details or onto the job sheet as well. So very quickly, I've added that to the form. I'm going to add a couple more. So I'm going to add let's put a text box in there. I'm going to give that reason for not running, and I'm just going to take you through just to the some of the intelligence sat behind this one as well. So I'm going to set this up, but we're just going to dig down into the detail on the right hand side here. So as we discussed just previously, it can be made mandatory field, and we can make this mandatory based on other fields either being empty or filled, or how they've been populated. So if the vehicle's not running is empty or filled, we can then say that this field is then mandatory. And then we can also add notifications. So if this field again is empty or filled, or with a particular value, then we can notify users within the software. So there's a lot of intelligence sat behind this, so you can do conditions around the data fields as well. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to put just show some other data fields that you can bring across. It's got a nice feature that you can bring across pictures into the check sheet as well. So this is often used, I've come across recently in the rail industry, where a lot of their check sheets have images to direct the engineer as he's doing the work. So we're going to set that into
sorry, I know you're trying to get through everything, but that's an interesting point, that, because again, historically, we've often been asked whether you can associate kind of manuals or images with assets. So whilst we can do that, what we're saying there is if it's specific to maybe some kind of planned maintenance visit and it's a planned maintenance check sheet, then actually the image could potentially direct the engineer to, it's like a sense check, it's a double check, you're looking for this part of the asset.
Exactly. And on some of the plants that our customers service, they are complicated, and that sort of thing, it just helps the engineer get to what he needs to be doing, and reassure him as quickly as possible.
Yeah, understood. So,
no problem at all. So I'm going to pull across a list here just to show you that you can pull across other data points here. So this is a list, so we can either have this as a drop down, as horizontal, as vertical, so how that's laid out on the form itself. We've got a few predefined options for this, but we can also add our own red, amber, green traffic light system at this point. But I'm just going to highlight one of these and add this to the form. So very quickly, missed out the name field, which is good. So let's have this as tire depth. So very quickly, I'm starting to build up a lot of detail onto the form. Let's put just for an example, we'll put a date on there as well. So we'll put a damage date, and we'll set on a signature as well, just for completeness at the end. Put the engineer's signature. So very quickly, I've been able to sort of build up the data points that we're looking to capture. We have some intelligence sat behind them, dependent on the behavior of the fields that are being filled out as well. So I'm going to save that. And this is for me, I really like about the software is being able to preview what the form looks like on a device without actually having to download it to the device and do it. So you can actually update the form, look what it looks like in various formats. So we've got the form we've just built there, and that's on a desktop. We can change it to a tablet, and a lot of people use mobile phones, so we can change the orientation. And so very quickly, we've got a view of what the form looks like, but also to the point where we can actually start editing the form as well. So it allows you to test the behavior of the form, add signatures and add the dates. So you now get an understanding of how the engineer is using that form, without having to actually download it to a mobile and try it out.
Strikes me that has so many benefits, because that, I'm sure we'll kind of review at the end, but in relation to those benefits we discussed earlier, you know, in terms of that intuitive design and easy data capture, it's important that when you build a form, it's not all just about have we made sure that we've included all of the information that we want to get from it. It's have we presented it in an easy, intuitive, logical way in which the engineer is going to be enthused even, but certainly encouraged to complete it and catch everything that you need. And even things like, you know, you mentioned about being able to select that fields are mandatory, that's just covering all bases, isn't it? So yeah, I see where you're coming from there. I love that.
Yeah, and so this is very much around the look and feel and behavior for the user. We've also got there's some settings in the background that are designed to, as I say, to set up but reduce the work and improve efficiency of the office in their processes. So an example here, it highlights you can link tools that are required for that particular test. You can link the check sheet, the form, to a specific service, to a specific equipment type. You can specify when it's used by the engineer at the beginning of the day on all jobs, or it's at the end of the day. So
that was the question I was going to ask, actually, and I think probably a question on the people's minds that are with us today and will watch it in the future. So it's probably an apt time to ask. The thing that strikes you is like, yeah, that's great. I can see we've done a vehicle checklist. We can say, well, that's required at the beginning of every day, or whatever the case may be. But these boxes below the service types and the equipment types, the obvious question is, if I've got lots of forms, how do I know that I'm sending the right form at the right time? And that's what that is, I'm guessing.
It is. It's taking that thought process away from the user, the office user. So you actually tag that form to a specific service. So whenever you raise that service, that form is automatically populated on the mobile device. And the same can be applied to equipment as well. So if there's a particular form or risk assessment and meta statement you need for an equipment type, then you can link that to the job. So when the call is being, or the job's being raised, the person raising it doesn't have to think about that. It's all done in the background. So
to clarify, what we're saying there is, if I have a particular form that is associated with a type A service for a particular type of asset, that's where I just fill those two boxes in. And then whenever we create work associated with that service type and that asset, that form goes.
Absolutely, exactly. Perfect. That. And you've also got things where you can specify that a result's required, whether you can consolidate it with a job sheet, and very importantly, if there is a failure, what do you do next? So do you want to raise a follow-up test once the remedial work's been completed? So there's quite a lot of intelligence sat behind it. It's set up once, but just reduces the workload, improves the efficiency for the office staff.
It strikes me that it's terminology, but it strikes me that it's not just the actual process of the work itself, it's actually the workflow that surrounds it.
It is, yeah, exactly that. And then we've got integrations with trade bodies, compliance bodies, so we can automatically populate their systems. And as we seen previously, we can add notifications based on fields past being completed, send a notification to a user which pop up here. So yeah, there's some remedial works required quickly. So yeah, this is a very quick fly through. So if anybody out there wants more detail, and please contact us. But that's a quick fly through the mobile form builder itself. And I think it'll be worthwhile just showing you how the form would look like on the mobile device as well. Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah.
I'll open up the form that we just created. So this is like we've seen on the preview. This is the form as you'd see, as the engineer would see it on their device. Again, you can fill out running hot and tick boxes, damage dates, signature, notes, and so on. So that's a quick fly through the form we've just created, but I think it's worthwhile just showing you what the capability is and how complex some forms can be if required. So this is a thorough examination for, it's actually for material handling equipment that's been specified by the trade body. So there's quite a bit of complexity around this, but so we've got drop down menus here. As you can see, you can different data fields to come through, measurements and wear, and also you've got drop down menus to select on the top here. So there's a lot of I like this form just because it tells you how far you are, or the engineer how far he is through the test, and so he might go off and have lunch and he can come back and he can see the areas that have not been completed. So this is one of the more complex forms that are available. So we'll just save that, and I'll show another one here is a counterbalance form, which is a bit simpler, but shows you how quick it is just to quickly
yeah, because a lot of preventative maintenance check sheets are exactly that, as the name would imply. They are check sheets, aren't they? So it is a case of, you know, making the relevant check and then just flying through the form and saying yes, no, and really there's only really a consequence or something additional to do if the answer is, did it pass? No, it didn't, or there's an advisory. And we've already seen how we can have knock-on actions and notifications as a consequence of hitting those buttons. So that's perfect. Have you got an example of what a form might? So this is great. We're inputting the information, but you know, as we said at the beginning, like you second guess what I'm going to say, Steve. That's perfect.
Yeah, well prepared for once. Yes. So this is an example.
This is the output that the customer would get.
Indeed. So this is actually a consolidated output. So we've got the job sheet, we've got the actual check sheet output from the CFTS check sheet we saw on the mobile. So this is the fields are populating this document, and also at the end, so we've got the same color coding based on the checks that are captured, and we've also got a certificate at the back end as well, which is linked with their system. So it just shows you sort of power and flexibility and what capabilities. So as soon as this work's being completed and the job sheet's been completed, you can send a consolidated job sheet, certificate and check sheet to the customer or to the customer portal while the engineer is still in the field. So it's done instantly as soon as it's been completed.
Just to clarify, Steve, and within it's probably a separate webinar at this point, but just to confirm, the design of this document is also done within the system, isn't it? So it's not something, again, that it's imported. it's something that a user of the system can actually configure this document and build it themselves.
Exactly. So again, the same principle, a non-technical user can start with a blank sheet of paper and create the document to look and feel how they want to display the fields that they want. So these is just examples of what the possibilities are. So this is that nice visual red, amber, green output on the check sheet. So but this is again is something that you've got the ability to create and edit without having to come back to us or having a technical person to develop it.
Understood. That's great.
And I think just conscious of time here, we've created up to half an hour, but I'm also conscious that we spoke about the output of this information and having capturing the information in the field and getting some value from that. You can, any data point you're capturing and any data field on the mobile form, you can capture, report and analyze and display in graphs like this as well. So again, the same principle, you can create and edit these charts. So this is a specific one I'm just going to drill down to. So we've got jobs by priority, and then I can drill down into the account behind that, and I can look at is there a particular piece of equipment that we've got behind that, if there's a particular measurement we've taken on that equipment, if there's a particular engineer that's done the work. So this is just really, this is, I guess, the output of what you're capturing.
Well, yeah, you're right to mention that at the end. And again, you know, I think we've done sessions on reporting in the past. I'm sure we're going to do webinars again on them in the future because it's so important. But just to clarify, because that is important, it is a question that we get asked, is in the mobile forms, we are in effect creating fields that previously didn't exist. So historically, you would perhaps expect that you're unable to report on those. But what you're demonstrating there is if you create new fields in mobile forms, they are available in the database for you to then create meaningful data and reports from.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we're back here before we finish because we said we try and wrap up in about 30 minutes or so. So we're pretty much on time. So really, if we go through or review those benefits that we discussed earlier, I think we've pretty much covered those, Steve, unless you think we've missed any out. I think flexibility is one of the overall points of demonstrating how the process works and that somebody non-technical can build them with confidence. Secure document storage for auditing purposes. Probably we've not directly discussed or addressed that, but the wider point is that it's a SaaS product, isn't it? So it goes into a secure Azure environment. So you know that they're there for you, and we've seen the type of document output, and obviously that's where they're going to be associated with that work. I think intuitive mobile design and easy data collection. Yeah, absolutely. We covered those in the way that you built the forms and showed us how intuitive it was from the engineer's perspective, as well as the person creating the form. And real-time visibility, you know, the same thing. As we're inputting data into the mobile device, we're able to see it in the back office. So that has a big influence. So is there anything that you think we've missed, Steve? Because I was going to say, well, we could probably wrap up on the whole benefit and say, well, in our view, it's a step change in the way that technology and systems have performed previously, because they were pretty restrictive. And it was expensive to make changes, and it was time consuming, and it was frustrating. So when we embarked upon this journey of Service Genie many years ago, one of the things that we all identified that we wanted to do was exactly this, was actually give the power of the configurability back to the end user, rather than it be held to ransom in many respects by those technical people, you know, at the software author's end. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that process of there being a change, a requirement for the form, and having to come back to your supplier and get quoted and charged, and the time delays, and then yeah, getting it done. That process is just painful and frustrating for everybody in concern. So yeah, there's lots of parts of the software. Hopefully we just touched on a couple today where we've tried to address those with an interface that's easy to use with a non-technical user.
Yeah, good. Well, today was always designed to be a teaser, because obviously, you know, we don't have the time and people probably don't have the patience to listen to you and I for hours on end. So if anybody does have any questions genuinely, then get in touch and we'll endeavour to answer them offline. Steve, have you got anything that you want to add to today's session? I think it's been great. I think we've done what we set out to do, which was to illustrate that there is another way, a better way, and obviously to invite people to ask us questions without, and also without the pressure of or the fear of being sold to as well. I think that's important to say, that if people do want to talk to us about how they do things currently or how they might want to improve things, it's a genuine open conversation that they can have with you.
Absolutely, yeah, but contact details there, and I'd welcome having a brief and honest discussion on any frustrations you're having and whether we've got a fit to help you.
All right, brilliant. Well, we'll probably wrap up there, Steve. 35 minutes seems like about the right time frame for that. So thank you for joining us today, whether you've been on Facebook or YouTube, or you've joined us live on Zoom, or even if you're looking at it in the future. And hopefully we will see you on another webinar soon. In the meantime, bye-bye for now.
Cheers, Gary.